Hello, my name is Kevin Basham, MEF COO, and I want to welcome you to this 45-minute MEF webinar aimed at digital service providers and IT professionals in the very important enterprise retail sector. Let me first set the stage a bit to kick this off. MEF, as an industry association, has over 200 member companies, including 120 network service provider members from all parts of the world. Many of these providers are introducing new high-value digital services, which are increasingly based on their emerging network edge and customer premise edge capabilities, as recently demonstrated in the MEF 3.0 proof of concept showcases. These new services will provide game-changing opportunities for the entire retail sector, and MEF is playing an important role in enabling these opportunities. To illustrate that potential, we're going to hear today from three industry-leading analysts from AvidThink, GSMA Intelligence, and STL Partners. And we will hear about Edge AI services from our leading service provider members, AT&T Business, NTT Communications, and Sparkle. So let's get going. I'll hand things off to Dalia, Roy, and Sylvia to tell us more.
Thank you, Kevin. There is no escaping the fact that COVID-19 pandemic has changed the face of retail forever, as retail companies had to adjust their operations. But what has also happened is that the move to omni-channel experience, so integrating mobile apps, social media, in-store online experience has actually accelerated. At the same time, we see that the move to digital, so retail enterprises are accelerating the retail transformation to digital. So according to our GSMA Intelligence survey, we see that 63% of retail companies have actually deployed IoT as part of wider transformation agenda. And why they're doing that? They're doing that to connect the assets. But connecting assets is just the first step, because what's really important is getting the data from those assets and then using data analytics to further enhance the operations. So they have a number of strategic goals and strategic ways what they're trying to achieve. And what we see, according to our survey, again, is that the key applications that enterprises are actually in retail using is quality of service, customer loyalty, and supply chain management. So, of course, technologies such as SD-WAN, 5G, Edge, AI, and IoT that we're going to discuss later play a really key role in enabling all of that.
Yeah, I'd agree with Sylvia there. Clearly there is a role for edge computing and AI in the retail sector, partly to succeed in overcoming some of the challenges that Sylvia just mentioned. I think the reason for edge in the sectors, it boils down to a few things. One is this need for real-time interaction with customers in the store. And, we always hear stats around how they have, X number of seconds to make the mark and to make the sale and all that sort of thing. You also need to be close to the customers. And so for that reason, the applications need to be able to process quite quickly in real time. They don't have a high latency tolerance. And the other thing I think is that there's physically limited space in the retail store. And so that has some implications on the type of edge compute infrastructure that retailers can have access to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as you were saying, Dalia, there are many use cases for the edge in retail. And depending on the type of retail, as you point out, there are different footprints that are available to run that edge compute, if you will. And actually, interestingly enough, one of the POCs that we'll actually see shortly demonstrates what can be done at the edge. And there's two types of edges, and we will talk about them shortly. One is the customer edge, which is actually on premises itself. And the other one is a network edge, an edge that the carriers can provide, where you can host compute in the safety of data centers, but have them close enough for low latency workloads at retailers. And with that, let's turn it over to Mo Katabe of AT&T to talk about the different edges. Over to you, Mo.
Hi, I'm Mo Katabe, Chief Product and Platform Officer for AT&T Business. So first and foremost, what is the edge? Well, for many years, we have been on a journey of moving data loads to these centralized clouds. And what the advent of 5G has enabled is the ability to bring those workloads back from the centralized cloud to either what we call the network edge or the edge of our network, or the customer edge, which is any business premise, no matter what industry you're operating in, healthcare, entertainment, military, smart factories, retail, etc. Multi-access edge is the term that AT&T Business gives to 5G and edge computing that is resident at a given customer's premise. In this use case, historically, you might have some sort of robotic device that would utilize the Wi-Fi network, potentially overloading it when you're also trying to use Wi-Fi for your guests and other capabilities. With MEC and 5G, you can now move your mission-critical robotics that is doing inventory scanning, looking at your shelves, route that over the multi-access edge compute network, and keep that traffic. Now let's move on to the network edge. What is the network edge? Well, just as we're in the middle of deploying cloud instances to customer premises, we're also in the middle of an effort of working with cloud providers to bring cloud instances to major metros across America. Simply put, NEC is a distributed public cloud platform embedded in the network edge, synergistically working with both our mobility networks as well as our fiber and wireline networks. When do you use this versus MEC? If you have MEC, why do you need NEC? Well, the answer is, hey, if you've got a large geographic footprint and you have use cases that are outside of an individual business location, well, NEC might be a fantastic use case and opportunity for you to think through moving expensive compute out of your business locations and into these NEC instances. A great use of NEC is for any business that has highly distributed footprint, aka branch locations or multiple locations, franchisee locations, etc. They want a common experience across all of those locations, but they don't necessarily want to invest in compute and applications to sit at each one of those. NEC allows them to shift that expensive compute, utilize someone else's capital investment, and then coupled with our fiber and mobile networks, move that experience into a nearby cloud.
As we've just seen in the video, there are lots of different types of edges, and each one has its own benefits that lend themselves to the retail industry. So, for example, some customers are thinking about the customer premises edge, and that's really useful when you're trying to keep data local. So, for example, it might be the case that for personal data, for very customer-specific data, you want to keep that on premises. In other cases, though, where you have multiple branches, you want to be connecting those branches or those retail stores easily, and you want to be sharing data across those, it makes more sense to use a network edge. And these are all enabling different types of use cases. We've just seen a couple in the video, but really it's about, I think, bringing in the digital experience that we are starting to get accustomed to inside the store as well. I've seen some really interesting stuff in the fast food space, for example, where you have a situation where you enter a fast food restaurant. The restaurant can suggest what you are interesting to buy, whether it's chicken nuggets or hamburgers or whatever it might be, and all using video analytics to make those recommendations. There's other things we're seeing around queue management, for example, to optimize that process, to make sure that customers aren't spending as much time waiting in a queue, but are spending more time, I guess, out there buying things. So there's lots of different things going on.
Definitely, and actually what's really important as well to mention is that bringing 5G and edge computing to IoT deployments is actually the next step for IoT. So together, edge and 5G can deliver ultra low latency and really fast speeds that are actually preconditioned for operations in real time. And 5G is happening. We see a lot of trials, proof of concepts, but also we see real-time deployments, selfless checkouts. We see quite a lot of use of AI in retail when it comes to warehouse management, robotics, retail robotics, and so on. But as it matures, as 5G and edge matures, the retail sector actually has really clear expectations what they want from 5G. So according to our survey, they very much focus on higher speeds. So 65% of enterprises in retail tell us that high speeds are very important to the success of IoT deployments. And they 5G private networks are also important, so that's 58%, and latency 52%. But 5G has to be seen as a mean to an end. So it is all important about bringing together real life use cases rather than actually only discussing technology and what technology can do. It's about connecting the physical and digital world together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that point, which is, it's about connecting the digital and the physical, because if it's all digital, what do you get? You get a couple of NFTs that have no real meaning in the real world, for instance, right? But fundamentally, I would say that, these use cases, a lot of use cases are going to be unlocked by the edge, and it's the edge in combination with 5G, both of them essentially. And at the MEF, we've seen what the MEF is doing with the carriers, with networking vendors, with the hyperscale cloud providers, to bring some of the to real life, to the real world, as it were, and bringing some of these use cases. And what we're going to see actually in the talk coming up is a real world example of a proof of concept of a retail use case in terms of a grab-and-go application. And it's going to leverage 5G, it's going to leverage edge computing, and it's going to tie together all these different pieces, the cloud, the edge, and all of these. And so we're going to turn it over to Will Eberl over at AT&T to kick off a description of the POC, followed by an example of what they did after that. And so we'll come back after the demo. So over to you, Will.
Well, today, we're going to link a lot of these technologies and challenges in an end-to-end solution for your business. We're going to focus primarily on a retail-specific use case, but I think this use case can solve a lot of challenges across a number of different industries. In this retail environment, we're going to have multiple IoT endpoints that are going to be powered by 5G. The applications these IoT endpoints are running on require low latency processing that wouldn't be able to be supported by that head-end Azure instance. So we're going to virtualize that application, provision it locally so that low latency processing can take place. In addition to that, we're going to be virtualizing VMware's SD-WAN functionality to evaluate the remaining applications in that retail environment. That will be profiling those applications and making real-time decisions on the performance of the underlay links and which path and priority to send those down. One of those wide area network links is going to be our 5G network. And we'll be able to honor that priority end-to-end back into that Azure cloud by using network slicing, providing end-to-end QoS and SLAs, even in a congested mobile network environment.
All right, thanks, Neha. So over here, what we're doing is we are running the demo for the cashierless grab-and-go application. Now let's get started with the demo. So before that, let's actually do a tour of the components that we have over here. So for that, I'll utilize the camera app on the phone. And if you see over here, this right here is the cooler, and we have all the instruction set over here for the customers on how to download the application, how to go about the transaction, and how to do the payment. The second component is the QR code over here. All the customer has to do is open up the application, scan the QR code, and they will be able to get access into the cooler. And as you see right now, the door of the cooler is shut, which means that we only allow authorized user to get access into the cooler. Now getting started with the actual demo. So for that, I'll get into the application. This is the application for grab and go. And as you see to the left side top corner, we have the information for the customer. For the right side, we have the number of credits that we have available with the customer, which means that only this particular platform will be utilized to validate if we have an authorized user or not. Now let's start with the actual demo. You click scan QR code. You scan the QR code on the machine. And you hear a click, which means that the door is now open. You open it up and purchase the products that you need. In this case, I'll pick up a Coke and I'll pick up a Sprite product. And then we come to the application again. And as you see, it only charges me for that one Coke and one Sprite. And I go ahead and do a confirm 20 coins. And if you see on the right side top corner, the number of credit goes down and the 20 coins are deducted from the total credits that we have. So like you see, for the customers, it's a very simple application. All they have to do is just scan, open and purchase the product that they need and complete the transaction on the application.
That was a really cool example of real life edge coming together and retail. So use cases are really, very important. But again, we run a lot of surveys, and when we ask our IT decision makers in retail whether or not they believe the IT projects are already using edge computing, most of them say yes. So this actually points to the fact that there is a need to educate enterprises on the technology and what technology brings, because edge is still very much at the beginning of the potential. But this is not the only challenge. So education is one of the big challenges, but not the only one. There are other challenges, and they relate to data privacy and security, integration of existing technologies, and last but not least, cost. So these 50% of enterprises in retail telling us these are the top 3 challenges that they're facing. But there are other challenges, lack of in-house skills and employee resistance, that actually keeps on increasing. So to be able to successfully deploy edge in retail, they really need to be solved.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that the telecoms operators can play a part in that. I think they are one part of this large ecosystem of different vendors and players that have to come together to deliver a solution. And each solution is quite unique. You know, it's totally different to have an application for queue management versus an application for a vending machine or whatever it might be. Each one is quite unique and has its own supply chain and ecosystem attached to it. But telcos have a role partly because they are integral as a connectivity provider, and I think we'll see in a moment how complicated networking can be and how that can be simplified in the future. But also the telcos themselves are evolving, are taking on new roles, doing more in the cloud space, for example, taking on more ownership to build that ecosystem, being more of a an orchestrator, technology kind of orchestrator in that. And so I think that will be quite exciting to see how these telecoms operators can hopefully work with the retail industry and other ecosystem players to overcome some of the challenges.
Yeah, absolutely, Dalia. And I'd like the use of the word orchestrator in this case, because the next POC we're going to see is all about orchestration, about pulling all these elements together. And speaking of telco as orchestrators, the MEF also plays a role. And what I've seen in this particular demonstration is how the MEF pulled together multiple parties, and you'll see quite a few parties involved. It takes a village, maybe a city, to make some of this thing happen and to make it transparent and consumable as a service by the retailers. So there's a lot of effort involved. But I think what the next the POC will show is how this can happen and has happened in this particular example. We're going to see the use of this whole, MEF 3.0 POC architecture with the edge, with an underlay, an overlay, with Wi-Fi, with WAN, with SD-WAN, all these different standards that the MEF and the telcos that belong to the MEF are involved with. And so it's going to be a pretty large POC, and it's going to be a demonstration of an end-to-end use case and how something like this can happen, edge as a service for retailers and other verticals as well. So I'm going to kick it off and turn it over to with Wenyu Shen over at NTT. He's going to take us through that. And after the demo, we'll all come back here for a live Q&A with the carriers. So stay tuned. All right, over to you, Wenyu.
In order to keep up the pace of the digital transformation, edge computing together with the 5G has become the main focus in most of the CSP's investment, including NTT Communications. In our edge computing blueprint, multi-stage edges are under planning, which will be built at distributed location across core, access network, and to even on-premise. Select your own service, deploy it to the right place, connect them end-to-end with the guarantee networks. This platform will pave the way for customers to move towards their digital transformation. This proof of concept demonstrates how CSPs can accelerate the adoption of multi-edge cloud services through the orchestration of applications and the connectivity on open edge computing platform. Enterprise-oriented services are purchased from a digital marketplace and automatically deployed across multiple edge platforms, such as on-premise, network edge, and public cloud. Moreover, by orchestrating the edge with the existing underlay and overlay network service, including Wi-Fi, WAN, SD-WAN, and Cloud Exchange. The POC also shows an end-to-end story, seamlessly connecting the on-premise environment to the centralized cloud.
But how applicable is the public cloud to the edge and to the premise?
It's not an or, it's an and. We really believe that the intelligent edge, with the power of the intelligent cloud, will transform the way we interact with the digital transformation and further blend physical and digital worlds for real innovation. At the high level, the opportunity is to bring together those two worlds, the digital and physical world, to create limitless connections, bring the power of AI and ML to react real time with events and delivering.
Multiple technology domains, multiple service providers. What's obviously very important here as well is how a service provider can actually maintain those business SLAs to its enterprise customers. So the whole topic of assurance becomes absolutely critical.
To achieve the desired experience for each application, enterprises require strict SLAs on the end-to-end service. So the goal is to minimize the impact of any network failure that should be located, fixed rapidly. At the wireless, wired, and WAN level domain, basically AI-driven assurance with machine learning is a must to be able to anticipate and react to any network issue. To satisfy the application level SLA, it's also important to constantly monitor the network quality end-to-end from client to cloud to be able to react rapidly.
Welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed that POC demo. And joining us for the Q&A, so obviously Dahlia's here with me. Still will send her regards. Unfortunately, she couldn't stay for the Q&A, but she'll be here with us in spirit. But regardless, let's welcome our panelists. Maybe we can have Will from AT&T joining us first, and then how about Danelle from Sparkle, and Yasuhiro-san from NTT. So welcome, gentlemen. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for taking the time. All right, so we have questions coming in. At this point, I'd like to encourage the audience. Hopefully, you've enjoyed the presentation so far, and I'm sure you have a lot of pressing questions. So, if you could, just put them in the Q&A window right there, and we'll make sure that we address those questions. In the unlikely event we're not able to get to all your questions today, we will address those in the blog post later. Very good. All right. Let's see. Let's go to the first question. Dahlia, you want to kick us off with that question?
Yeah, sure. So I think this one's for Daniele. So the question is, what do service providers do for retailers today, and what are the steps to evolve the relationship, especially with regards to Edge and 5G, which is, I guess, been the main topic for today?
Well, thanks for the question, Dahlia. Actually, we have seen our colleagues before discussing, and I picked up some notes. Silvia said something very interesting about quality of service, customer loyalty, and supply chain management. Now, putting aside the latter, there is, I think, one common word that unifies the concept of quality of service with customer loyalty, and it's experience. Today, service providers are engaged in improving the experience that our enterprise customers, retailers, are offering to their end customers. End customers, of course, are evolving. End customers that are digital native, end customers that are requiring a new level of engagement. In the past, when we talk about experience in a retailer environment, we talked about probably the ambience of a shop, of a point of sales. Today, this is still important, but the experience has been digitalized as well. So whenever an end user is entering a store, she pretends a fully personalized experience, fully customized, something that is just for her, for him. How can a shop, retailer, offer this? Well, there are all those digital enablers, and service providers are, I believe, very much centric in this concept. If you consider, again, something that Silvia said before, connecting the assets. again, telco service providers are connecting humans, are connecting machines, are connecting data, are connecting ecosystems together. What we are doing today to improve this experience? Well, think about IoT, think about fashion. You know, in Italy, we have this deviation with fashion. So everything that we do, fashion is the first use case. So if you consider a retail fashion shop, how can you let customers to engage more? Well, probably having them interacting with their mobile phone with all the assets that are located there. So we don't talk about Internet of Things anymore, but we are going to the Internet of Products. Products that can become alive, products that can respond to a query done by the smartphone via QR code, products that can interact with the smart mirror, products that can, let's say, be shown to a customer that is trying a dress, and maybe there are necklaces or bracelets or rings or earrings that can be coordinated. So all this digital experience needs, of course, connectivity, certified connectivity, secure connectivity, high bandwidth, low latency connectivity. What does mean? That it means that it's not enough to interconnect the shop anymore with the broadband, with the ADSL. 5G is the key. 5G is gonna changing and reinventing the digital store experience. And of course, all this experience is generating an incredible amount of data. How can you manage? How can you deal with this data? Do you have space and power in a standard shop within a mall or in a normal road? Well, probably not. Or even if you have, you don't want to dedicate it to host computing platform, but you want to dedicate to the real stuff that should be in the point of sales. And that's where the edge is coming in, because the edge is allowing you to deal with the analytics, to manage and digest all that incredible amount of data that this experience is generating. And then edge doesn't mean necessarily customer premise. It can mean network, as Mo was saying before. So the last point of presence of the telco before the shop. But depending on the use case and depending on the application, it can be also cloud. At the end of the day, hyperscalers are investing also in edge location. So it's not anymore the concept of the cloud as 150 milliseconds latency distance. Cloud is becoming more and more edge, closer and closer to the end user. So all this combination is something that service providers are mastering today. And of course, the advantage, what will be when edge and 5G will be much more present in the industry, will enable the service providers to offer a large amount of those use cases. And at the end of the day, why the service provider? Because the service provider is the trusted partner for an enterprise. And we have seen it in the post-pandemic era. The service provider, the telco, was the one that allowed businesses to survive, that holded the connectivity, that improved the security, that avoided that all those cyber criminals were attacking our own data and our own business. So I believe we have great opportunities over there.
All right. Thank you, Delali, for that answer. And that was pretty comprehensive in terms of touching all the elements of why a service provider makes a lot of sense for the retailers, right, with 5G and edge in there. Next question is coming in here. I think it's directed at Will from AT&T. It's an interesting one. How do you see multiple connectivity options playing out? We saw a little bit of that in that last POC, right? But how do you see multiple connectivity options playing out? For example, say Ethernet versus Wi-Fi versus 5G.
This is a very hot topic. We see it very relevant for retail customers, and it's an evolving topic. It's a dynamic topic. When you think about those connectivity options, a lot of those are fluid from a technology evolution perspective. Wi-Fi, for an example, is constantly evolving with new functionality. You think about 5G. From an early stages perspective, it's still, it's evolving, right? So that element. And then you think of the use cases within the retail side, this is dynamic as well. So a lot of the use cases and their requirements are evolving. So this topic of, what is the right connectivity, the dynamic in nature, based on those two elements that we're trying to solve for. But when I think about it, obviously Wi-Fi is the most mature of those technologies. When you think about retailers and the use cases out there and what they're solving for, there's a lot of great use cases that Wi-Fi solves for. I mean, AT&T having a large managed Wi-Fi portfolio, we're working with a lot of retailers on what those use cases are. Are they digital sensors? Are they environmental sensors? Are they video sensors? Point of sale elements that they're connecting. So those are the common ones where I start to see this bleed of is it cellular 5G that, we're solving for. It comes into what are the problems maybe that Wi-Fi is struggling with. Mo touched on one of those common ones in the short video where you saw that autonomous guided vehicle, that robotic element traversing maybe a large geographic warehouse. We've seen specific challenges with Wi-Fi, going from one access point to another where it lost connectivity. So the reliability plays a critical role in some of those endpoints. Autonomous guided vehicles, is an example where we've seen Wi-Fi struggle with certain, geographic areas. So cellular 5G, being able to have a much broader coverage could be an example of where that would complement and provide, that support as a more reliable element. Also seeing back to the throughput, one of the big common drivers of 5G is that throughput capability. So as you look at new applications, AR, VR applications, high-def video, where you're really condensing more and more of those endpoints into small areas, that access point could reach capacity concerns or reliability concerns for those high bandwidth applications. So I think that's another classic example where I think 5G adds another layer of certain ones. But to really answer the question, is it Wi-Fi? Is it 5G? I really believe the future is probably they're going to commingle, coexist in a lot of situations where Wi-Fi is going to solve for a lot of great use cases. But then they're going to need 5G or cellular to solve for other ones. So I think that's probably the long-term evolution. I think cost is another big consideration that comes into play. To cover a small footprint, Wi-Fi is very affordable. If I'm looking at a really broad, warehouse or even campus where I've got internal elements, I've got external elements that I'm looking to cover, that's where it could be. You want to complement that more with cellular and 5G to have a more consistent experience. And then it could be down to the actual use case. There's going to be certain ones that gravitate towards Wi-Fi or 5G. I just pointed some of those out. So it's a dynamic discussion right now, but I think, from an AT&T lens, I think we're in a great position to help retailers navigate this. We've got a big aspect of our IoT portfolio or in building both Wi-Fi and 5G to really solve across that ecosystem of technologies.
Got it. Thank you, Will. And I'll turn it back to Dahlia for the next question that's coming in. Dahlia, over to you.
Great, and I think this one, I'm sure all three panelists will want to provide their view. But the question is, how are service providers working with partners to present solutions for the retail sector? And also, do you see the go-to-market as a vertically integrated solution or more of a platform? To be interesting to, I guess, hear all three of your thoughts. Maybe we'll start with you, Yasuhiro, and get your views from NTT, and then perhaps Daniele after that.
Okay. NTT Com takes a vertical approach to offer values to our customers. We are a telecom company, so NTT Com primarily provides network services, and we are expanding our service to cloud side and also edge side. And one of the areas where we lack capability is in devices such as sensors and also software applications. So in both of those areas, we are partnering with lots of companies to deliver values to our customers. For example, we run several partner programs, such as device partner programs. We also participate in organizations such as MEF and Ocean Alliance in order to encourage more companies to join our program. So NTT.com has a wide range of customers, not only in retail, but also manufacturing and construction. So we are looking for a wide range of partner companies. So NTT.com combines our service with devices and services of our partners to deliver values to our customers through a vertical integration approach. Because no customer want to deal with lots of vendors, so we want to be the partner for our customer, which manage all the vendors in order to easy to connect the variety of layers of services and devices. That's our approach.
So I'll take from Yasuhiro. Basically in Sparkle, but I would say in the entire team, formerly Telecom Italia Group, we approach this digital revolution with a platform approach. But of course, wherever we are able to vertically integrate, we prefer this road. I come to explain. Telecom Italia Group is reorganizing with a set of internal factories that are specialized on specific sectors. For example, we have Olivetti for the entire IoT business. We have Nuvol that was recently spin-off for the cloud and data center. We have Telsi for the security, and we have Sparkle that is basically the factory for the international products. So whenever we approach a retail customer, a retail enterprise that is having a complex problem to solve, and the solution is a mix of IoT services, security, and cloud, and multi-geography connectivity, we have internal solutions basically to integrate the products that are coming from our sister companies. And as in NTT way, we do prefer to be the single point of contact for the customer, because enterprise customer is not used to interact with multiple parties. They want a single point of contact that is responsible end to end. Then it's our, let's say, problem in quotation mark to integrate those solutions. Whenever we are not able to provide the solutions within our group, of course, we have a various number of partners that are able to integrate, to be plug and play, but they stay behind us. So Sparkle or Team is the first contact point and the front end for each customer.
Got it. Well, thank you, Denali. Let's see, we have a lot of questions coming in. I would say keep those questions coming. As I said, even if we don't get to them today, we will address them in the blog post, after this event. So let's see. I think we have time for one more question here, which is, so panel, how do you see MEF standards being used in these solutions that we just discussed? And maybe we'll talk about, how do you see them playing with the edge, right? I think there was a question here, I'll fold it in, which is, regardless of the telcos that are supporting the solution, how do you engage the edge in a way that's sort of telco agnostic, right? So maybe, Denali, do you have some thoughts around that? MEF standards, and then how do you address the edge in a sort of telco agnostic way? And I know I'm asking a telco that, but maybe you have some thoughts on it.
Well, no, I mean, MEF is the short and easy answer. Why? Because, yeah, because basically, so let's also go out from this gray area. MEF is not anymore just writing standards. MEF is producing and testing and implementing and provide also kind of turnkey to its own members. So the elaborated answer is that when you deal with such a complex problem and you need to integrate multiple services, you need to have a common language to interact between the parties. Definitely in this kind of digital experience world, you cannot pick up the phone or send emails to query, but you need to run feasibilities, severe check through engaging your partners via APIs. And that's where MEF is mastering. And that's where MEF is providing the end-to-end comprehensive. So also for the telco agnostic, does it mean that I can allow my customer to change telco? Well, maybe. I would see it better from another perspective. Today, with a big multinational enterprise, is extremely difficult that one telco only is able to cover all the geographies. So for sure, I will have to engage with some of my peers in order to provide extensions, local loops, backbone pieces, as well as integrate with partners that extend in the chain of value. So provide maybe some CNF that is not in my scope. In that case, MEF is allowing to be telco agnostic because an enterprise can engage via API its front-end telco, and then this telco can interact with another service provider via MEF API and provide the seamless experience to the enterprise.
That makes a lot of sense. And with time sort of running out, maybe Will or Yasuhiro-san, do you have any thoughts on adding to Danelli's answer? MEF is the way. Is that the agreement here?
Yeah, I agree. So entity covers mainly Asia area, but we felt some difficulty to expand our business to Europe and America. So if MEF standard is really standard all over the world, it's very useful for us to collaborate with other telecom companies in order to cover all the world. So yeah, that's what I expect.
Got it. Any thoughts, Will?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they summarized it really well. I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to interoperability. And it's not just interoperability between vendor ecosystems, it's partner, provider ecosystems as well. So, so when you're building those against the global standard, which you're a leader in that space, I think that's what really allows us to innovate faster and solve, true customer challenges on a global scale, and not just the lens of how we want to provide that service, how it's going to integrate with other providers and other technologies into that vendor ecosystem. And our clients, they're looking for that end-to-end, service. So if the technologies are built against standards, we can provide services across those. I think that's it's easy to say these technologies should work together, but the devil is in the details when you dig in and you truly try to integrate these and provide it in a production environment. That's where the standards, the interoperability is absolutely critical.
Yep, absolutely. And I think, that's what speaks to the sort of the power of the MEF, right? So as a global retailer, I could come to AT&T and NTT and Sparkle and say, hey, I want this global solution, built around a set of standards that I can manage operationally without, bankrupting me, right? And the MEF standards speak to that. So I think that's definitely, and we saw it in the POCs where we saw collaboration between the vendors and the carriers, right? And I think that was really nice. I think I think the reality is no one, as Danelli said, no one has there's no one single solution that can solve everything, right? And so I think the MEF provides that vehicle to come together. And so, whether we're looking at sort of MEF 70, 82, or 90 for the SD-WAN, or the orchestration series, the LSO series, and the 55, 79, 80, 81. Hopefully I got that right. Then Daniel will get me if I don't. Right? But anyway, I think that it's a nice forum to make this happen. And with that, again, send those questions. And if you have pressing questions, we'll still take them and we'll put them in the blog post and we'll send you an email when the blog post is ready. And for those of you who have registered, and you can watch it or read it at that point in time. Likewise, it's a recording of today's. And so when that's available, you can email as well and you can watch it in your own time. You can watch the whole replay in slow motion if that's your preference, and we'll definitely have a recording of that. And with that, what we're going to do at this point in time is thank our panelists. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Danelli. Thank you, Yasuhiro-san. And Dahlia and I would like to say to the MEF that we really enjoyed hosting this, and we're going to turn it back to Kevin to wrap us up. Back to you, Kevin.
Thank you to Dahlia, Roy, and Sylvia for talking us through this very impressive introduction to what Edge AI services can do for the retail sector. And thanks to Will, Yasu, and Daniele for highlighting the pivot that MEF service providers are making to this important area of digital transformation. Edge AI sounds so technical, but what we have seen in the webinar is how fundamental it's going to become to our everyday shopping experience. What we also understand is that the retail sector doesn't have to take on the burden of digital transformation by itself. The network and cloud service providers use MEF standards to help retailers launch into a new era of bricks and mortar shopping experience. So standardization is not only good for the providers, but directly benefits retailers as well. Thank you for participating, and please encourage your colleagues to visit this webinar on demand at mef.net/retail2021.